cat in the tree and.
Sure.
Domestic violence, I don't think. Sadly.
Well, we have. Look at that latest report.
Okay, thank you. Let's get started, directors. Even though that's a fascinating conversation, we're going to move on to our regional parks and trails. So welcome to the November 26th Regional Parks and Trails Committee meeting. I would like to acknowledge that we are gathering and governing on the unceded territory of what is now known as the Comox people. And we are grateful for their grace and collaboration as we do this important work on their lands. And the first item is Regional Parks and Trails Final Strategic Plan. Thank you. Thank you. And anyone opposed to receipt? I see none. Do we have a hand up? No.
Madam Chair, would you like a presentation on the?
I would.
Okay,
Yes,
very
thank
good.
you.
Thank
Sorry, I will turn
No,
that
that's
over
okay.
to you now.
I wasn't sure. Mark
I'm waiting
Harrison.
for you. You're waiting for me.
Yeah, we were waiting for each other there. So Mark Harrison, our manager of parks, is here to introduce the final strategic plan for the Regional Parks and Trails Service. This is a culmination of a very substantial amount of work, both public engagement and technical development. So Mark, I know you've got some comments to make around this this plan, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, James. Through the chair to the committee. If I could bring up the PowerPoint, that would be great, please, Lisa. But really great to see everyone again. I know it's been a few months and there's been lots of kind of work since our last meeting together. I'm very excited to be at this point and to present the final Regional Parks and Trails Strategic Plan. There's been a lot of work, a lot of effort gone into this plan. And I do want to definitely thank Kate Evans from Lanark, who is with us here today. She'll be available for questions if there are any at the end of this presentation. But Lanark's done a really fantastic job on this document. So just quickly, I just want to go through process review, kind of where we're at, and then look at the revision highlights based on from our last committee meeting till now in terms of what got changed at a high level in the document, and then look at next steps. So in terms of the process, we're here, we're at the final plan. We've gone from adopting or establishing this service in September of 2022 and then engaging on the strategic planning process, which formally got going in the spring of 2023. And through that process, we've taken a three-phase approach all along the way gathered a lot of input from the community, from Comox First Nation, from various interest groups, conservation groups and recreation groups in the Valley, and all gathered information from municipal partner staff and the general public, and obviously the committee here today through the various phases to get us to this final plan. So since the last meeting, which was a couple of months ago in September, we have the final draft was made available to the public for comments. We had an online comment forum that was available open for 4 weeks. We also informed the interest groups about that referral, and they were able to add additional comments as well. We've also met with the working group, which is made up of staff from all the various municipalities and electoral areas at CVRD, and reviewed the document once again and made some kind of final revisions. And then we also took all the comments that we heard from the last RPTC to ensure that those were addressed and made basically final tweaks to the draft plan and set us up for the final plan. There is a revisions table at the back of the staff report that outlines all the comments that we heard and then the actions that were taken. So in terms of the plan, plan highlights, we received 33 comments in total. That was from interest groups, from the public and the committee. I mean, bearing in mind that this has already been out to a lot of the interest groups and to the public already, so we weren't expecting a whole bunch of comments. And a lot of the things that we heard were just like more kind of minor tweaks in nature to the document. There were kind of three kind of more significant items, so we'll just kind of look at those at a high level here. So the biggest three major highlights basically are that we did clarify opportunities and roles for interest groups and partners. So we did hear that that interest groups wanted more opportunity to provide input as we kind of go through the process and start to establish the service. So we did add interest groups and nonprofits as key parties within some of the additional action items within the plan through the implementation plan. And we also added language in the partnership section that just spoke to and clarified the desire for us to collaborate with interest groups and partners moving forward with the plan. We also refined the role of management direction statements versus management plans. Management direction statements, they're a process that is used by other park agencies to kind of bring parks more online quicker. It kind of helps streamline the process and also makes the process a bit more fiscally responsible. They can be used as an interim measure when a full management plan process isn't necessary. It's just a simpler and kind of less resource heavy process. So we kind of define that a little bit more and when we'd use management direction statements versus the management planning. So that got kind of tweaked in the plan. And then lastly, we heard from the committee about more desire to see biodiversity stewardship more within the plan. So we did strengthen the language in the document, while understanding that the role of regional parks really will be to balance that conservation and outdoor recreation needs of the region. So next steps, we're bringing the final plan to the committee today for adoption. If the plan does get adopted, we'd be seeking to present the plan to the Comox First Nation, to the City of Courtenay, the Town of Comox, and the Village of Cumberland if they would like to see that plan and have any questions about the plan. So we will make that available to our partners. In terms of actual next steps after the adoption of the plan, the big steps for 2025 would be to start working with Comox First Nation and really understand their interests and how they want to participate in the service, and also start to explore how we could find if there's any mutual interests that this service could help them. And then start to work on the land acquisition strategy, which would be largely guided by the P1 land acquisition process document that's within the plan. So working through that, I would imagine that the land acquisition strategy itself would probably take the good part of next year to complete. And obviously all that work will require adequate resources to ensure that we can actually implement the plan. So on that, I'm happy to take any questions. And as I said, Keith is on the line as well and is available for questions also.
Thanks very much. Any questions, directors? Ah. 22. Sure. I remember. Is that him?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not so many questions, but just a lot of thank yous for everybody that worked so hard on this, because this, as you probably know, rose like a phoenix from the ashes, because at one time there was a regional park service in Comox Strathcona days, and it kind of lapsed because guess what? They couldn't agree on how to do it. So this is a huge step forward. I do think that the future generations are going to look back on this day and thank us for having the foresight. a couple of things. So I think you've heard me say before that regarding planning for park acquisition, so many times they come right out of the blue. So it's really about reacting to emerging opportunities, opportunistic, quick responses. We got to be quick on our feet because when these things come up, just like the house down the street that sold in a week for 100,000 more than they were asking, you never know. So we have to be at the ready all the time, especially some of the key areas that we've been discussing over the years that may be coming back. One springs to mind. And I think this way we could actually be ready to actually move on something like that, which would be tremendous. So one of the things, though, I read where the federal government basically was promoting 30% of the landmass in parks. Did you read that? It's like, it sounds like a Soviet 5-year plan, totally unachievable. But I'm just, I'd be happy to be getting 3% over the years. So I think this is going to be a really good document to have in our back pocket, especially when we get to those crucial moments when the situation arises and we have to act fast because, like the old farmer said, you only get to buy the farm next to yours once in your lifetime. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments, Director Grieve. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead, Director Mayor.
Thank you so much. First, I just want to really congratulate staff and everybody who contributed to this plan. It's a really, really good plan. I'm super excited about it. I also want to acknowledge the inclusion of words like biodiversity and stewardship and ecosystems. It's really great to see the presence of those key ideas in there. I have 2 questions, and they are related to each other, and they're more kind of looking forward to the implementation side, and that's assuming adoption. The first one is about monitoring. So I think it's objective 5. You talk about baseline ecological assessment more for ecosystem services. And I'm just wondering if you had conversations about also assessing biodiversity and habitat condition. And so the purpose there, of course, would be to measure change over time. And one of the ideas that could come out of doing something like that would be related to some of the communication planning and maybe having like a state of the parks annual plan. And then somewhat related to that, in the indicators matrix, a lot of it is quantitative. And what I was wondering is if you also had discussed quality of relationships, quality of ecosystems as being something that we would measure.
Thanks, Director. Did you want to?
Yeah, thank you. I'll start with that, but I think I'll let Kate weigh in after. But in terms of the monitoring, those are steps that we would take once we actually have parklands. So that would be part of the management planning process for parks going forward. There would definitely be inventory piece at the start, so that we could have a good understanding of the land before we take it on or before it gets developed or protected as a conservation area. So I think that those things are going to happen. But again, I think those are kind of getting into more of the details, and whereas this document is a little bit more broad strategic planning. I like the idea of a state of the parks plan. So that's something that we can look at doing each year as part of the budget planning, budget cycle, if that's something that the committee is interested in. And then in terms of the measurable pieces, the reporting, the monitoring, we purposely tried to look at quantitative measures so that it was easy and replicable moving forward, so we could actually really see changes over time. So we did try to take the qualitative kind of pieces out of that monitoring piece. And Kate, I don't know if you're available, but if you wanted to add anything to that.
Sure. Thank you, Mark, and through the chair, and thank you, Director Mayer, for the comments and questions. I think, Mark, you did a pretty good job of responding initially. Maybe a couple of comments on the indicator piece. We had a much longer list initially, and it included a wider range. And I think it was a combination of having the measurement or the performance indicators that are being tracked on a regular basis be achievable for staff. And I think the comments on, being able to gauge over time the quality of ecosystem or some of these more qualitative measures are hugely important. The complexity involved in that and the kind of resources needed to carry that out is quite a bit more than we anticipate will be available, at least in the short term, as this service gets established. And so a big part of the first highlight that Mark spoke about in terms of change in the document, because it wasn't just in one place, but it was in many places to do with partners and interest groups, is that there were many that felt that they had a lot that they could offer to support the capacity of the staff at the regional district in order to have a higher level of quality and kind of consistency and ongoing attention, especially on the kind of environmental monitoring side of things. And so a really big, I think, part of this plan, and maybe being able to expand upon the lens for how the monitoring and tracking goes, is going to rely upon use of those relationships that go beyond the CVRD staff. So maybe I'll end there.
Thanks, Kate. I actually would love to follow up on that partnership theme. So part of what we do in the village is we have two key partners that help us with our massive amount of community forest park. And those partnerships are critical to us being able to manage the asset as a whole, and also the infrastructure that goes into it. So I see that there's a mechanism in here to do that partnership. I'm just not sure exactly how it lands. Is that in the RTAC or that might not be the right word, in the technical advisory group, or how would those partnerships actually be formed? Like, are they all an MOU? Do we need to develop MOUs with everybody, or can we just use them as a resource without that structure?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to kind of determine that over time. I think for this first year, it's going to largely be through the land acquisition strategy and prioritizing what we want to acquire with the service, because essentially there is no service unless you have parks or trail lands to actually manage. So I think through that initial process, I think we'll lean on our partners to get extra data as needed. But I think those will be largely in-camera discussions between this group, along with discussions with Comox First Nation. And then I think once we actually start to acquire lands, depending on what the lands are that we acquire, then we can start to have discussions on the partners that are needed. Like, I think if we take on a regional trail somewhere, it's quite a bit different than a large piece of like conservation lands. So the partnerships will differ. So I think those kind of discussions and those details will happen farther down the line. But we're definitely excited to work with our partners, and we realize that there's a whole bunch of knowledge and value out there in the region, and we're definitely looking forward to working with them all.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the report? Then we can move those recommendations that are there.
Second.
Thank you. And anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And recommendation number 2? Thank you. And anyone opposed to that? That's carried as well. Thank you. thank you so much to staff for the report and thanks so much to Kate. Is she already gone? Nope, she's still there. Thanks so much for your hard work on this. Yeah, happy to have it done. Yay. And now we have a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Do we need a seconder? Thank you. And is anyone opposed to that? I don't think so. Thank you. We're adjourned.